Hey folks, and welcome to a whole new episode of the One Wildlife Podcast with me, Abbie Barnes. Really excited to be hanging out with you guys today within this episode. We have got a fantastic guest speaker, Charlotte from Exmoor National Park, which is actually my home national park, so I am mildly biased, but it is a wonderful place, and if you have not come here to explore it, then it is time for you to do that. But with that slight debate aside, if not preach, I would just like to say a massive shout out of thanks and gratitude to everybody within my Patreon community. So Patreon is a platform that's created for creators, essentially, such as myself, and helps to support us with our work. And anybody can join a Patreon page that a creator sets up. So I have a Patreon page, which is patreon.com/spend more time in the wild. And then what there are there is lots of different tiers. So you can pick a tier with the different options and giveaways and all sorts of interactive features that suit you best and suit your budget best. And then all of that money is fed back in, for me personally, into wild and to giving back and stepping up towards creating this ripple effect of positive change. So thank you to every single person who is within my community. If you'd like to join, check it out. Then on that note, let's swing this conversation round to today's episode. So this was recorded when I was in Italy in June 2022. And if you're listening to this as it's just gone live, you'll be able to tell there's a bit of a delay between the recording and the publishing. That is entirely my fault. Life has just swallowed me up and I've had to press pause with the One Wildlife podcast just shortly. But as you can tell, we're back up and running if you've been following this season. The other thing I will say about this episode is my audio is not fantastic. I hope you can bear with me. I am on a steep learning curve when it comes to audio recording, both in the background as voiceovers for my films and then also for this podcast. And do you know what? Doesn't matter how fancy the technology, just a good pair of headphones with a built-in microphone seems to be the solution. So that's what I'm recording on now, that I'm back at home and I've reviewed this conversation. I hope you enjoy it. I certainly left feeling exceptionally inspired. So without further ado, here is me chatting with Charlotte from Exmoor National Park. Exmoor is a place like no other. As one of the UK's 15 national parks, it boasts a myriad of habitats, from rugged heather moorlands, home to wild deer and semi-feral ponies, to the most extensive broadleaved coastal woods in Britain and the highest sea cliffs and most remote coastline in England. The park is full of historical buildings, bubbling brooks, and fascinating combes and valleys, and it's an international dark sky reserve. Exmoor sees around 2 to 3 million visitors pass through its borders each year, and as such, a team is needed to ensure these beautiful spaces are protected. Someone who knows all about enabling the public to give back and get engaged is Charlotte Wray, a ranger within Exmoor National Park. Today, we get the exciting opportunity to talk to Charlotte and find out more about her role and what it takes to keep Britain's wild spaces flourishing for all to enjoy. So Charlotte, welcome to the podcast.
Morning, thanks for having me.
How's it going today? I'm tuning in from Italy and you're on the edge of Exmoor. I think, do we have different weather or have you got the sunshine today?
No sunshine today, pretty cloudy. It's not raining, which as soon as you start growing a veg garden, you realise how useful rain actually is. So I'd be quite happy for a bit of rain now. But just a bit grey, but yeah, not too bad.
No, fair enough. No, it's really exciting to have this opportunity to speak with you. So we've obviously met in person back in 2021 when I was cycling the length of the country via every national park. You came and supported us as we hiked up and around Dunkery Beacon. That was a rainy day, wasn't it?
Very rainy. That was classic. It feels like classic Exmoor weather, classic Exmoor winter. But everyone was very happy. But Dunkery is it's a good place to hike to in that sort of weather. It feels very brutal.
Yeah, so Dunkery Beacon, for those listening, is the highest point in Exmoor National Park. And actually, I think this would be a really nice place to sort of jump in today. So the UK has 15 national parks, as I just mentioned in the introduction there. But what is it that makes somewhere worthy of being designated a national park? And then what makes Exmoor worthy of being designated a national park?
Yes, so national parks are a really interesting one because when I describe them to people, I like to think of it as it's very much like a landscape that is protected for many different reasons. So not only is there the amazing habitats you mentioned earlier, sea cliffs, coastal moorland, heathland, everything, but there's also the people that live there and the interactions that people have had on the landscape for, you know, thousands of years since we've settled there, really. And then so also the historic buildings and the archaeology there, and then also the current communities, so farmers, people living in these sort of remote villages, all these things, and how they sort of connect to one another and how people interact with the landscape. So all of that is kind of what makes up national parks, and what makes something like a national park slightly different from, say, a national nature reserve, or I don't know, something like an RSPB reserve, because generally they just look at the wildlife that's there. But what national parks aim to do, and were quite early in thinking this, was look at the whole landscape and how it all interacts. That is generally the way we're going a lot more with conservation or with environmental sort of studies generally, is to look at the landscape and how it all interacts, because obviously you can't just have single reserves everywhere, because that just creates pockets and islands of sort of areas that are very good for wildlife but don't actually interact with the rest of the, you know, how we live. So a lot of places, most wildlife trusts, RSPB, everyone like that is recognizing that and looking for that approach of actually linking landscapes and making sure that there's space for nature everywhere, not just in these sort of small islands. So that's generally what national parks did and why they were designated. So Exmoor was designated national park in the 50s, one of the earliest ones. And it's sort of quite important because, sorry, that's a lorry going by. It's quite important because they reflect what was happening at the time. And, you know, the reason for national parks in the first place was post-war. What basically can people, soldiers coming back, people coming back and sort of reflecting this new reality of the world and their sort of integration into nature, and what did people have, what did they have to go and actually, how did they experience nature? And so national parks were designated for that reason, along with, you know, the Kinder Mass Trespassing and the Countryside Act and things like that, that basically allowed nature a space for people to enjoy the countryside. And I guess that's the thing, is that the national parks it's about people's interaction with these spaces. So not only are they wild spaces and reflective of actually what's there on the ground, but people's interaction with that and how they can enjoy it. And they were supposedly called the lungs of the nation because they were sort of these spaces set aside. But in the modern day, we're looking at things a bit differently and looking at more landscape approaches to things rather than just having these single places reserved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And it's fascinating, really, as you say, going right back to the Kinder Mass Trespass, when, you know, people went out into the common lands to ensure that they were or to protest almost, that they were free to access for anybody, you know, trying to minimize that divide between sort of the private landowners and people's right to roam, so to speak. And obviously it's very different here in England to how it is in Wales, how it is in Scotland. Everywhere's got its own rules and regulations. But ultimately it is about keeping wild spaces, quote unquote, free for people to access and enjoy. And Exmoor is also happens to be my home, right on the edge of Exmoor National Park. I know that's where you are as well. So what is it then that pulls people to national parks? I mean, obviously, yes, there's the appeal of being able to, quote unquote, escape urban areas, but, you know, with these 15 national parks being so varied, like what are the common things that pull people to head out to these places?
It's funny because I think part of it, there's many people come here for different reasons. There's some people who are expecting it to be a bit more like an American national park, where you turn up and there's almost like Jurassic Park, I imagine. I think we should create a gate somewhere that helps people navigate to, so they feel like they're entering it. It's a funny thing because these spaces are mostly privately owned, and because they are reflective of the landscape, there is a boundary, but on the boundary, how do you know when you're passing from one area to another, and what does that boundary kind of mean? So it's a funny one, because I think people come here because I hope people understand that you know, if you're a taxpayer in the UK, you're paying for this. This is your, like, all the work that we do, all the work that I do every day is supported by the general public, and therefore there should be a feeling of ownership over that. You know, not necessarily like, it doesn't mean you own the land, but that you own the right to actually enjoy it and to go to those spaces and actually, I don't know, just experience them and feel like they are something you deserve to go to. And there's so many barriers to that. I absolutely understand that. And, you know, we had a great sorry, I could waffle on all day. We had a great welcome to Exmore experience the other day, where we've been working with local community groups and community buses to get people out, say for example out of Ilfracombe, which doesn't have great transport links, and actually bring them into the national park. And we've had a really good project officer working on that. And I went out with them the other day into the Ore Valley. We did this lovely walk along Weir Water, and it is amazing. You walk through that and you can barely feel like humans exist. I mean, there's sheep around, so obviously there were farmers, and there's you know, dry stone walls and things like that, so you understand that there has been human impact there, but for the most part you feel like you are incredibly remote. And these people could only get there because there was a community minibus that brought them there. So we had this walk, and you know, we were stood there in this sort of gnarled, so walking through moorland into the bottom of this little gnarled oaky woodland, and people were stood there and they were saying, I've never, bearing in mind they're only from Ilfracombe, and you know, we're less than an hour into the national park, this felt like they'd never seen woodland like that. They'd only seen woodland like that in films like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves and things, and we heard a cuckoo, and someone said, I've never heard a cuckoo in my life. And these are people in their 60s, and you think that it's so frustrating sometimes that there's no lack of interest. People are not interested in the environment. I think for the most part, people don't not think it's for them, but there's such tedious barriers like public transport. And suddenly that means that their access, and we can say as much as we like that this place is for you, but if there's a barrier like that, how are they supposed to get there? And there's barriers for other people that feel like they're not welcome in the countryside for whatever reason. You know, it's a very white environment on Exmoor, so potentially some people feel like actually that's not reflective, well, it's not reflective of who they are, and therefore do they feel welcome there, and what can we do to bridge those sort of barriers and take those barriers down for them. So I've forgotten your question. I'm just waffling about access, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people that come here for many different reasons, and for the most part, I think, well, I hope that people get the same experience, which is that it's an amazing place. And I think even though I don't mean to, I take this place for granted. And just hearing that from someone, what a woodland that we're standing in, I've never seen something like this. It's just amazing. It really is just so great to hear that from someone.
No, 100%. And just to reassure you, I'm very happy with the tangents, because I believe tangents happen for a reason. And straight out, we're getting your passion here, which is equal access. You know, and as I'm sure this is something you guys are coming up against as a team, as a National Park Authority. How can you get people out into these beautiful spaces? You know, and I fundamentally believe that getting people out in nature is a hugely, or can be a hugely transformational experience. You know, whether it is hearing a cuckoo or one of those streams, you know, or the rivers, or seeing the different variety of trees and the wind blowing through the leaves. Like, I don't know, there's so much healing and grounding to be found in nature, because ultimately we're a part of nature and we need it so much more than we talk about these days. So let's just stick with this theme for a moment then, before we come to sort of how you came to working in the national park field. How are you guys as a team looking to bring more people to the national park from different ethnic backgrounds, from different sort of wealth backgrounds? Like, what steps are you guys actively taking to help people get into Exmoor?
Yeah, so we've many different sort of avenues for this, and it obviously depends on what the barrier is for people. So as an example, a few examples, our engagement program that we have over the summer, which is what I'm organising at the moment, for how we take an engagement trailer out to different places, to different locations on the border of the national park or within the national park, just to sort of remind people hey, Exmore's here. It's got space for you, whatever your interest is. Here's a place you can come and enjoy. So we're going, hopefully this year, we're going to be going to Minehead along the seafront, because that's Minehead and that sort of area of Somerset is a hugely deprived area, and yet people have this amazing place and resource right on the boundary. You can walk to the national park from Minehead, but you can't cycle to you can't cycle sort of safely to the national park because you've got the A39 there. So what we're working on at the moment is trying to, for not only go and engage with people and make sure that they feel comfortable coming into the national park from places like Minehead and the sort of urban fringes, so they're termed, but also how can we improve access? So can we do cycle routes, safe cycle routes, off-road cycle routes for families, for anyone really, to access the national park? We've got huge hills in our way literally, so how do we make these things more accessible to people? I rode the Granite Way recently on Dartmoor, and what a fantastic resource that is, just to be able to get people from a train station literally into like the belly of Dartmoor National Park. And so doing things like that, we need to be able to do projects like that basically can get people, say, out of Tiverton along the Exe Valley into the national park. How can we explore those sorts of things? It all relies on funding, of course, but there is a lot of money around for sustainable transport, for cycling, for things like that. In terms of other sort of barriers, so for example, the race barrier I was mentioning, if you don't see people like yourself in the national park, how do you feel like that's somewhere you'll be welcomed? We've got a really exciting day coming up with Amira from the Wanderlust project, which is really exciting. I can't wait for that. We're going out for a walk. So this she's a Muslim woman. She's hiked a lot during the lockdown and set up these groups basically and led guided walks for women, for Muslim women to feel comfortable in the countryside. So to be together and to work out how to sort of navigate issues if you come across them in the countryside, people making you feel unwelcome, or literally, what do I do in the countryside? If I come across a field of cows, which I think does not depend on your race. It is literally, a lot of people feel like, what do I do in a situation like that? If I come across a field of cows, how am I supposed to navigate that? So working out what the person's barrier is and actually how can we help them. So yeah, we're doing a walk with her on the 6th of July out at Pinkery, which I'm really excited about, because we get to see Pinkery Pond and do some wild swimming as well, and just working with people, like yourself as well, working with people who are doing a lot to help people bridge those gaps into national parks and countrysides and nature spaces. And I hope that national parks can continue to do that and work with individuals who are trying to do the same sort of work that we are already, but are doing it better as well, in a sense, because who's better to talk to people who have sort of mental health issues than people who are happy and willing to talk about that? Who better to talk to a group of Muslim female hikers than a Muslim female hiker? We want to step in and offer what we can, but also fully understand that sometimes I'm not the best placed person to do this, and actually how can we work together to all deliver that, because we all have the same aim.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Mira's great. We're going to get her on the podcast as well. She's just a hard one to pin down. Amazing. She's very busy.
She's so busy.
No, it's really good to hear that you're looking at this from all angles, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes. Obviously, every national park's approach is different because every national park is different, but there's definitely seems to be a common theme, having spoken with many people working within different teams, that sort of the fringes of the national park, people just are not quite accessing the facilities and the beautiful spaces within the national park. So I think it's just a continuous, keep looking at it, keep digging in with that, and as you say, bringing people in to show people that this is for them too. So it's wonderful to hear that you guys are obviously continuing your work on that. So I'd like to sort of steer this now slightly to your background and what it actually looks like working in a national park, because, you know, for me, and probably most people listening, they are users of outdoor spaces. You know, we come and play in them, but they're not necessarily places of work. But for you, you're a user and it's a place of work. So first of all, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background, how you came to be in sort of the conservation field, so to speak? Where does that passion come from? And then we'll jump into what it's actually like working in the team in Exmoor and what your sort of day-to-day role looks like.
Yeah, so I'm in my mid-30s now, and I studied biological sciences, and did a master's in taxonomy at the Natural History Museum, which was amazing. Such a weird place to do a master's, because you're like super in the background and in the like what's the word, down in the basements, and there's just so much random stuff like overstuffed giraffes and things, but it was great. And then from that I went into science publishing, so I worked for the Royal Society in London and ran scientific journals, which was brilliant, and I got to visit a lot of different amazing places and talk to a lot of brilliant academics who were doing all sorts of fascinating research about ecology, animal behavior, genetics. But yeah, then I was 27 and had a sort of late, which I think is quite common now actually, a late 20s crisis of, actually, I'm really unhappy in my job. I wake up every day and I don't want to go and do it. And I thought, that's not fun. And what do I need, and what do I want to do? I had no idea whatsoever. I thought about doing maybe a PhD, doing research furthering on, like for my master's, but I just wasn't sure. So when in doubt, quit your job. So I did that and worked in a restaurant. I was still in London, so very much scraping by. And then volunteered with the London Wildlife Trust. I had Sydenham Hill Woods, which is an ancient woodland, part of the old Great Northwood in London, just down the road. So I started volunteering there and met some pretty amazing people. A lot of people who were volunteering from the area, all ages, just wanted to get involved really, and do sort of coppicing and habitat surveys and all sorts really. And yeah, there was a project officer there who's sort of a ranger for the woodland, Daniel, and he was fascinating and brilliant and made me so interested in getting into that sort of field of just outdoor work. But what did that mean? I had no idea. And I had this sort of background of ecology, and so I understood that I was interested in the outdoors and was getting to grips more with a bit of, ID, like butterfly ID and tree ID and stuff like that. But I couldn't hold a drill, I couldn't use a hammer. I was like absolutely useless at the practical side of stuff, which, if you want to be any sort of outdoorsy ranger type person, you need to be able to hold a drill. Otherwise no one's going to take you seriously, especially as a woman. So I decided that I needed to improve my practical skills, and Countryside Jobs volunteering page threw up the Trail Team Iceland, which was a group basically happening out in the semi sort of national parks area, in the south of Iceland. So I applied to go on that and I was accepted, which was excellent. So that was 2017, I think. So I went out there for 6 weeks and slept in a tent and lived communally with everyone and was absolutely freezing most of the time. And it was just amazing. We built steps, we hiked. I'd never really hiked or camped at all. I was buying like a tent, like brand new at that stage. I didn't know like how to camp or live outdoors or anything. So it was a bit of a jump into the unknown. But yeah, 6 weeks of that. My boyfriend came out part way through, and we did a bit of traveling around as well. And Iceland, if you haven't been, I don't know, have you? It's just such an absolutely stunning place. It's so special. It's half the time it feels like you're walking on the moon, and the other half it's just so amazing. Like the size of it all is just huge, and you can completely understand why people believe in trolls and elves and things when you go there, because you're like, this place feels so special. It feels like someone's dropped it from some sort of fairy tale. And you know, the fact that there was no darkness the whole time, so I was out there from May to July, and the snipes were just calling, like flying through the air, doing their like ruffling calling thing. It was just absolutely amazing. So yeah, by the time I came back from that, I could hold a drill, which was great, and was a bit more practically minded. And then we went off to do some woofing, me and my boyfriend, into France, and that was brilliant. Again, I bought dead hedges, which is, you know, like so instead of hedge laying, you've got dead hedges where you basically build up the brash material in between stakes and build up a hedge. And I bought that to France, to rural France. Everyone absolutely loved it. The guy we were staying with used it around his veg garden, and he was very happy for it keeping the rabbits out. So yeah, we just did a lot of woofing, and which is working on organic farms. If people don't know, you basically get bed and board, and in return you offer labour for sort of eco type minded people. So yeah, then we came back from that, and I think that was 2018 by then. I got a job with the Forestry Commission doing oak processionary moth surveys, which was my first paid work basically in any sort of outdoor field. So it was the most special job ever, and it involved a lot of landowner engagement, a lot of maps, working out land ownership and things like that, and also a lot of staring through binoculars, looking at the limbs of oak trees to check for nests of moths and then plotting them. So yeah, it was brilliant. So that was a year of my life, and throughout that time I was just applying I decided by then that I wanted to be a ranger, so throughout that time I was just applying for lots of assistant ranger positions, assistant wardens. Every time I applied for something, they said, "Oh, brilliant, you've got this, but actually, do you have any like experience with sheep?" I was like, "What? No, I don't have experience with sheep. What are you talking about?" So I felt like every time I was coming up against another hurdle, like I'd spent so much time volunteering and just doing everything for nothing, for no money, and I felt like I'd got this bunch of skills, and suddenly someone wanted me to be able to look after sheep and I was like, I don't have that skill. So I ended up doing a chainsaw course, because I was like, look, right, let's just invest some money. So I had literally, this was the last of the money that I had. I spent £800 on a chainsaw course, so cross-cutting and cross-cutting and felling, and I went up to Lake District and did that, and that was brilliant. And then I felt like I had something. A lot of ranger jobs want you to have tickets of some kind. I should have done brush cutter. That would have been a lot cheaper, but I just decided to jump in and do chainsaw. And yeah, just carried on applying for jobs throughout that, and then managed to get a interview for an assistant ranger position in the South Downs National Park. And that was at the stage where it just doesn't seem to happen as much anymore. I don't know why, but about 150, 200 people applied for about 3 positions. And it was pretty intense interview. But yeah, I got one of the jobs, and that was amazing. And that was the start of it all, really. And I was with the South Downs for 18 months. And it was, the assistant ranger jobs are just the best ones, because you have no real responsibility. The buck never stops with you, and yet you get to do all the fun jobs like counting water vole poo and doing coppicing with volunteers and making fires and things. So it was absolutely brilliant. So I did that and just met so many wonderful people. And the South Downs is a very different national park to Exmoor. It's very, very built up, and there are some, and it's designated for a very different reason. Very recently, sort of 10, 12 years ago, designated because of the downs, so the chalk grassland they have there. So it's quite different to Exmoor, but still really special, and lots of amazing people farming there and looking after the habitat and the landscapes. So I was there for 18 months. And then I was looking for ranger positions, so ranger jobs, and there were not a huge number of them. They just don't really crop up very much. So when I saw one come up for Exmore, I decided to apply for it, even though I'd only been 18 months in the job at South Downs. And yeah, applied for this and found out I was pregnant as well at the same time. So literally came out of the scan, my first scan, and had Dan, my boss, call me and offer me the job. And I was suddenly like, what do I do? Like big decisions, big life choices, up sticks from South Downs to Exmoor. But yeah, we were really happy to come down here. This is the southwest. We'd generally been making our way further southwest from London, and was just so happy to be offered this job. They were, you hope that everyone's going to be very supportive of you when you tell them you're pregnant, but at the same time, you're about to start a new job. Everyone was really excited to have me join the team, and then suddenly I was going to go off for a year. But I've literally never felt so supported as I did here, and I'm so grateful for that. And I think I just only hope that that's how a lot of people are treated as well when they're pregnant, and when they tell places that they're pregnant, tell their workplace. So yeah, I had a year off looking after my baby, and then yeah, we're here sort of 2.5 years later now. Well, 3.5 years later, and yeah, so I've had that time to sort of get to grips with Exmoor a bit more, because obviously I started 4 months of trying to understand Exmoor and its people and its place, and get on with my colleagues and everything, and then had a year off with my baby, and then February 2020 went back to work, and obviously COVID happened. And but here we are now.
No, it's really interesting to hear all of that. And it's funny because I started my career wanting to be in wildlife filmmaking. Then I got a bit annoyed with the technology and decided, maybe I'll go down the ranger route. And you certainly hit the nail on the head there. I think it's a very appealing job for people. Like, I like the outside. What should I do? I'll become a ranger. But it is also a very skilled job. There are a lot of things you need to be able to do, from people management to outside countryside management, and obviously that's your area of expertise, not mine, so I won't blabber on like I know what I'm talking about. But I definitely looked into it quite seriously, and then realized that it is a very competitive career to get into, because it's an awesome freaking job. So would you mind talking us through like what day to day looks like for you? Because I can imagine it changes with the seasons, and the different things that need doing, but sort of a quick whistle stop tour, so to speak, of what life of an Exmoor ranger plays out like.
So as you're completely right that it differs a lot with the seasons. So generally in the winter we're doing a lot of path survey work. So on Exmoor we look after all the bridleways and footpaths and restricted byways, basically all the rights of way across the network. We have that responsibility. So a lot of the winter is spent doing path surveys, walking all the parish paths and actively checking for issues with gates and signposts and vegetation, etc. And that basically leads to having a really good access network, which sounds like the sort of, I don't know, with that side of the role, it sometimes sounds like it's a bit, what's the point of that sort of thing? But that's literally how people get places. That's how people get from Porlock to Dunkery. That's how people get, when we met at Wedding Cross, all we did was walk along footpaths and bridleways to get there. And so you can have this great landscape and look after things, but if actually people turn up somewhere and they can't walk because there's a tree across the footpath, like how are they going to get there? So it's a huge part of a very important part of our job as rangers. So yeah, a lot of winter spent doing that. And then in the summer and spring summer is a lot of time spent doing engagement activities. So like I said, the trailer, when we take the trailer out to places like Minehead and Tar Steps and Valley of Rocks and places like that, engagement with kids, and we do seashore safaris, like rock pooling down on the coast in Lynmouth. So I was doing one on Thursday, which is great, like activities to sort of free activities for people on half term and summer holidays and things. So there's a lot of that engagement side. So those are the two differences between the sort of each half of the year. And then in amongst that, there's the stuff that is just constant. So there's the landowner engagement. So a lot of our work is having good relationships with the community and with people on the ground. So understanding if issues arise, giving people a way to actually access a lot of our other projects. So I generally like to think of rangers as the people, like the first person that you're going to come across if you're a landowner or if you're just someone, a visitor coming, walking somewhere on the national park. Hopefully you will come across the ranger, and or through whatever, whether it's just meeting us, whether it's we have a patrol ranger number, having us to sort of show you either places to go in the national park, but also things to access within the national park. So if you're a landowner and you want to do some meadow restoration, then we can link you in with our teams that do like our More Meadows program, who do meadow restorations and take local provenance seed and basically distribute it amongst different landowners who are interested in having lovely wildflower meadows, which are great for butterflies and birds and all sorts. If you suddenly want to plant an orchard, then we can link you in with our woodlands team. If you want to do other tree planting, we link you in with our woodlands team to sort of get more knowledge about how to do that. We've got a farming and protected landscapes pot of money at the moment that was given by DEFRA to all national parks and all AONBs. And that basically is supposed to help make positive changes for wildlife, for habitats, but also for people's interaction with nature. So that's the scheme going on at the moment. So how can we support farmers who want to do tree planting or riparian, like river restoration, or do something if they have like an archaeological like a heritage structure on their farm, how do they do something to support that or to protect it? So how can we basically like offer lots of the different projects that we do in the national park? How can landowners access that and find out more about it? So there's a lot of that, a lot of sort of outreach to communities and other local groups and landowners. And then there's just all the other stuff that just fits in when it does. So, random bird surveys or, outreach work, like going on the walk with you, like working with Amira, Green Spaces, Dark Skies, which is a great art project working across different national parks, how we can look at the dark skies side of things and create beautiful art. So they just done a lovely project down in the Valley of Rocks, which once the video comes out, I think is going to look incredible, which is basically lots of volunteers walking with lights through the Valley of Rocks, which is a beautiful place, but also is potentially an old river valley back sort of when the glaciers were last around, and basically pushed the Lynn River down through the Valley of Rocks. So they're showing what it would have looked like and having the lights go along. So there's a lot of facilitating basically people doing other projects in the national park as well. We're sort of expected to be like a jack of all trades type thing. So to jump in when there's issues, if we have fly tipping, we go and get that. If someone wants to know the ponies, if they want to know where to go and see the ponies or the deer, we do pony roundups because we have pony herds. So, showing how the Exmoor ponies work as conservation grazers. So we have some up at Haddon Hill, and then, how to stop people leaving their dog poo everywhere. It all just completely ranges. There's so much different work, which I think is why the jobs are great and why people want to do them, is because you can't ever get bored, because you never know what you're going to be doing next. And there's also a lot of emails.
Yeah, I feel you with the emails. Gosh, my brain is exploding. I feel like there's endless tangents and directions we can go with this conversation. But we'll just park on the rangering job for one more moment. So if somebody's listening to this and they've gone, oh, that's the job for me, no matter their age or where they're living or their background, what sort of very simple pieces of advice would you give them if they were looking to pursue a career either with the national parks or in a sort of protecting wild spaces role?
So first thing I would do is well, it depends on where you live. So we have young ranger programs in Exmoor, and many other national parks will have them as well, and I suspect some AOMBs will. So if you live close to a protected landscape, I would find out if they have a young ranger program, because that is a huge it's a brilliant program, and it really gets kids from local schools into the national park and shows them what it might be like to be a ranger or a farmer or a forester, or lots of these sort of outdoor jobs, which a lot of the kids in these rural areas, should be getting. And because they're in the area, they live there, they want to stay there, then it's about how do we upskill them to get them to the point where they want to do that job, and that they're at the point to do that job. So I'd check if there's any sort of young ranger programs around there. I'd volunteer. I'd just ask for people, if anyone emailed, if any child or teenager or young adult from around Exmoor emailed any one of us rangers and asked for a day out to see what our jobs look like and to learn, absolutely, we would drop everything and do it, because I think we all believe that these jobs are brilliant, but they are also, fewer people are applying for them. And that's a concern, because national parks are, if national parks don't exist, if the upcoming generations don't care about these places, then they will not be funded. And therefore, I don't know how would get by. We'd have skeleton sort of staff, I guess, and you would just find it more and more understaffed and being able to do less and less work. So it's a role of ours as people that already work in the national parks to actually help people help kids and help young adults get to the stage where they actually are skilled enough to be able to go into these roles. So I would always just ask for help, and I would get involved in, if you know any sort of citizen science projects that are going on. So from like the big butterfly counts that the Butterfly Conservation do, the big garden bird watch that the BTO and the RSPB run, things like that. Just sort of look at the world around you and notice what's going on, and just try and participate in some way, and absolutely just ask for help, and if you need it, and let your school know what you're interested in doing as well, because I think a lot of places are, sorry, again, I just go off on tangents like nobody's business, but university, like I went to university, but it was £1,000 a year when I went. £3,000 I came out with. That's affordable for most people, probably, if you're paying it back over many years. Now it's incredibly expensive to do that, to have formal education like that. So I do always say this to everyone, but I think we are coming towards a point where more vocational studies, and the in Wiveliscombe, near where I live, the school there does a mixture of BTECs. So you could do agriculture, you can do catering alongside the more traditional, art, science, those sorts of things. You can do a real mixture, and I think that's really important, because kids need to be coming out of school with these sorts of skills, so that they could feasibly go straight into apprenticeships and internships and all these sorts of things that will get them into jobs. They don't necessarily have to go to university and come out with a degree and however much debt that they'll never be able to pay off. I think it's really important that we, as employers as well, that we change that expectation of actually what we want people applying with. Do we want them applying with like a countryside management degree or something? Like, we shouldn't expect that necessarily. We should see, do people have the other skills and the other capabilities that have shown an interest and shown that they have real potential. And I think, just think that's really important at the moment, to actually look at the world and what's changing and how it's changing, and actually change what we're expecting as well.
Yeah, no, there's some really sound advice there. And I think if we were actually doing this interview in person, I'd probably give you a high five right now, because it's so good to hear that progression of thinking, because it does feel like a lot of things are stuck in the old ways. Like even for me, like getting car insurance, now it's my turn for a tangent. Like I don't really know, I don't fit in a box as to what my career is. So it's like trying to just get car insurance is really challenging. So it's as you say, it's really good to hear that progressive thinking. And I think the truth is, it is accessible for anybody, and you do need to have that passion. I think that would be my one addition there, is because you need to be active in taking your steps to getting into these jobs and these careers, whether it's rangering or something like I do, which is sort of weaving in and out and creating your own pathway in terms of sort of giving back to the planet and getting involved in that sense. But sort of sticking with the people theme then. So coming back to Exmoor National Park, I talked about in the introduction, it being a dark sky reserve. I think it'd be really cool just to talk a little bit more about what that is. And then we'll sort of round this conversation off with how people can actually get involved. Because, the Lake District National Park is the busiest and most visited national park in the UK, and it's quite easy to see why, but I'm definitely a big biased fan of Exmoor, living there and having enjoyed all of its angles. So I think it'd be really nice to sort of top this conversation off with how people can get involved in Exmoor as a national park, some key places they can go and explore. But before we come to that, then let's talk about the Dark Sky Reserve. What does that mean, and how can people actually experience that?
So Dark Sky Reserve is basically it's an area of Exmoor, and it's reflected, the designation is a reflection of the fact that there is very, very little artificial light in that area. So you have a core area, and then you have like a buffer area. The core area basically has you have these special instruments that measure the light pollution in the area, and the core area is basically as low as it can go. And then you have a buffer area which maintains that core area and protects it, and that fits into our planning system, because as a national park we are the planning authority as well. So having that sort of consistency of advice to people about where sort of new developments happen. Obviously we're benefited, like we have in Exmoor, this huge sort of middle section of moorland which is largely uninhabited, which is why it's so dark there. So that's what it is. In terms of how you can enjoy it, we have a really good self-led walk from Larkbarrow, which is just outside Exford, which is sort of in the centre of the park. If you just look on our website and just search the Larkbarrow Walk, Dark Sky Walk, then you can find more information about it. It's really great. We have these way markers that are painted with glow in the dark paint, so you should be able to do the whole thing absolutely with no light of your own, just following these way markers. And it's only about a mile walk out into basically the middle of the moorland, where you're going to expect to see the most amazing constellations and galaxies, and get the best view, because you'll just have nothing around you. With dark sky stuff, really important, our eyes take so long to adjust. The more and more time you spend outside, the better, without any artificial light, the better for seeing the constellations and galaxies and planets above us. So turn up. You've got to drive there, which is another issue. But say somewhere like North Hill, and Bossington Hill, which is where we lead a lot of the dark sky walks, you can walk to there from Minehead, so that's positive. But the Larkbarrow self-guided one, you drive to. So turn off your lights, do the mile walk. By the time you've got out there, that will be about 20 so minutes or something, and then your eyes will have adjusted, and you're in the centre of the Dark Sky Reserve there. The light pollution is at its lowest, and on a clear night when the moon is basically the moon is barely anything, so you've just had your new moon, that's when you will just see unbelievable sort of it's just stunning, absolutely stunning what you can see out there. Yeah, I'm not a dark sky expert at all, but even I can find things to look at out there, because you've got so many amazing constellations, and you can get very good apps on your phone, but again, you don't really want to be doing that when you've just gotten your eyes adjusted. So I would just get out there and have a look. It doesn't matter what it is that you're looking at, it's just beautiful.
Oh, I'm embarrassed to say I haven't done that yet, so that is now on the list as soon as I'm out of Italy.
It's brand new, if that helps. So it only opened last year, so don't feel too bad.
Oh, okay, good. So as I sort of mentioned earlier, I'd like to just round this conversation off with some sort of practical or additional practical accessibility tips or advice that you might have for people who perhaps have never been to Exmoor before, or who live on the fringes and would like to get into the park. Where are some nice sort of gateways and entry points that people can get involved in exploring this beautiful place? And then to top it all off, how can they give back? How can we show up for the national park as a place in order to help contribute to its protection for future generations?
Yeah, so I'd say, so if you have access to your own transport, or the sea coaster, the coastal route to Lynmouth is a very good open decked bus. It's not the cheapest, but it's not too bad. I think it's just, it's like to think if you're paying for an entire family, it's something like £50, which is not ideal, but as a day out, hopefully achievable for some people. So you can get that coaster route up or drive. I would go to places like Tar Steps, which is not on the coastal route, but Valley of Rocks, which is so that's just outside Lynmouth. Lynmouth is like this. I absolutely love going to Lynmouth because it just feels like everyone is on holiday all the time. It must be such a nightmare to live there. I don't know how you get any work done, because you just feel like you should be eating fish and chips and eating ice cream all the time. But we had our rock pooling event there on Thursday, and I'm just reminded of what a place it is. But Valley of Rocks is just outside there, and that's the old river valley that I was talking about, and that is absolutely stunning. You could park up there and walk for about 5 minutes or half an hour, all on tarmac. It's incredibly easy walking. There's some really nice steep bits if you've got kids that want to go and sort of have a scramble. You've got Castle Rock and Rugged Jack there as well, really beautiful high sea cliffs, and lots of goats, which is very interesting, and lots of quite fun for people. Another place is Tar Steps, because it is really a really great walk. That's along the River Barle, so just outside Winsford, and you again park up there. There's a pub there as well, which is very nice, and you do it's about an hour's circular walk. And I love a circular walk because I hate going back the way that I've come, even if it's like along one side of the river and coming back the other. It feels just different. I don't know what it is. It feels like I'm actually getting somewhere rather than just coming out and back. But that's the woodland through there, ancient oak woodland. You get pied flycatchers there. There's lots of amazing butterflies on the slopes. It's really beautiful place, and good place for the kids to splash and paddle around as well. And where else? Horner Wood, I think, would be my other one, just outside Porlock. So Horner Wood is again some ancient woodland it's that sort of really special woodland that's pretty damp but reasonably cold all year round. So you get really interesting lichens and bryophytes and things there. And there's just some amazing sort of short walks around there. Again, river to splash in. You've got Horner Farm Shop there, which does ice cream and brilliant things. And you can camp nearby as well, which is always a good shout. So yeah, I think those are my top three. In terms of giving back, there are so many different ways, depending on how involved you want to get. You could literally do the 2-minute litter picks. So you could go down to Bossington Beach and do a litter pick for a few minutes, or if you're walking through Horner Wood or something, you see rubbish, pick it up. That's a really sort of a short, nice way to help get kids involved as well, I think, because they learn so much about plastic and microplastics now at school, and I think they're really engaged with it, which is brilliant. And a bit more engagement, you could sign up to be one of our, well, actually the next one up, I would say, something like iNaturalist, which is a very, very useful app to help log what you see in the national parks. So if you see a beetle that you have never seen before, and you take a picture of it and you can upload it to iNaturalist, it will identify the beetle for you, and it will tell us that that beetle was there, which is great, because sometimes you can assume that something like a national park is full of wildlife, but actually no one's writing down that what's there. So things like iNaturalist are a really great way for kids. I think there's a kids version as well, for kids to get involved, and for just anyone to get involved and log what they're seeing. I like to do that with the seaside safaris that we do as well. So upload all my pictures of crabs afterwards, and then it means that we've got this like almost like a bio blitz, where you turn up in one location and for 2 hours you just write down everything you can see, and it just shows what's in the area. And the seashore safaris are quite a good way of doing that, so just showing all the anemones and the crabs and the limpets and everything. And then I'd say the next one up would be to actually get involved as a volunteer. So we have lots of different volunteering opportunities, whether it being with one of sort of the partner organisations like Butterfly Conservation or the Southwest Lakes Trust, doing practical conservation activities like coppicing or sort of clearing birch regeneration or something for heath fritillary butterflies, or pulling up Himalayan balsam. You can do that with us. Pat, one of our volunteer officers, he's always down at Tar Steps pulling up Himalayan balsam in the season. And Himalayan balsam is, if you don't know about it, it's an incredibly invasive species. And whatever your opinion is of non-native species, the problem is with it just absolutely fills the riverbanks, and there's no space for anything else. And it has a very short flowering season as well, so it's actually not that good a food plant for bees and for other sort of pollinators. So yeah, they try and keep on top of that. So that would be the sort of top way to get involved, I'd say, would be, and we have literally a button on our website that says get involved. So click that and you can find the volunteering opportunity for you.
I have to say, I've really enjoyed flicking through the Exmoor website. It's very good. It's very up to date, full of facts and information and ways to get stuck in, no matter whether you're a landowner or a visitor or whatever it is. So definitely take a look if you've got the opportunity. But I've loved this conversation. I think we've covered a lot of ground. There's undoubtedly so much further we could have gone with this, so many different places and things we could have talked about, but I'm conscious of the time. So what I think we'll do now is we will park it there. I think we will have another conversation at another point, but let's jump into our quick fire questions then. So these are much more about you, and then we'll finish up this conversation just maybe with some last parting advice for people who want to just get outside. So are you ready for this?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, question number 1 is, what was the last book that you read and loved?
Oh, I've just finished it and I'm so sad. It's called Circe, and it's by, I think, Madeline Miller, and it's all about it's sort of integrated. It's about a woman living on an island, but she's a god, and it's all integrated into the classic stories, so like Hermes and the Cyclops and all sorts of things. It's amazing.
Oh, that sounds epic. Oh, you know what, with these podcasts,
and it's so long.
Is it long? Is it a big one?
Yeah, which is great, because you're like in the world and something, you don't want to leave it, and you've still got ages left, and then when it does finish, you're like, that was brilliant, but at least it was long.
Ideal. Yeah, I find with these podcasts, like every single person recommends something that I really want to pick up, so I'm filling a library here. I will add that one. Okay, you
could just pop down here and borrow it if you like.
True that. We will make that happen. Yeah, I'm quite a fast reader as well, so I won't deprive you for too long.
That's all right.
Good. Second question, are you a morning or an evening person?
Neither, really. I was thinking, I was awkward. I heard this on the radio the other day. They were talking to Russell Foster, who's like a professor of circadian rhythms, and he was talking about the larks and the owls. And I'm always one of those awkward people. I don't really feel like either. However, I am a forced lark because I have a 3-year-old, so I'm up at 5:30.
The decision is not in your hands at the moment.
Exactly.
Okay, question number 3. If you were reincarnated as an ice cream flavor, what flavor would you be?
Blackcurrant and cream.
Oh, that's niche. I like that.
Yeah, they sell it down in Lynmouth. It's fantastic. It's my favourite flavour now.
Okay, I'm also going there. I tell you what, like, despite being in sunny Italy right now, this conversation is just making me really excited to come home and just rediscover Exmoor all over again.
But you've got gelato everywhere there, surely.
I know, but you're definitely right. Like, Lynmouth has something so special about it. In fact, that whole coast does, but let's not get lost there because I will definitely go on my own tangents of how awesome it is. Okay, next question is, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Hairdresser.
Okay. Did you pursue that or?
I did not. No.
Fair
but I remember it just being my absolute passion. I really wanted to be a hairdresser.
Cool.
I don't know when it left me, when I didn't not want to be one anymore. I'm not sure.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, halfway. Question number 5. 5 question. English is not happening for me today. What is your most unusual talent?
Oh no, I hate these things. No, I don't know. I used to be able to recite pi to like 5 decimal places, but that's not really very impressive anymore.
Oh, is it not? Like, I'm mere number, so I'm impressed. You have my impression. Oh gosh, English, this is going terribly.
I can speak English.
Oh, well done. Brilliant. Better than me, clearly. Oh, so good. All right, well, we'll park that one for my own embarrassment's sake. Question 6, who has inspired you the most in your life?
Ooh, that's really hard. I don't think I have one person. I think I take a lot from like the people that I have around me. And yeah, since coming down here, especially as well, I've met, and since becoming a mother, I've met so many other amazing like women looking after their kids and doing and working and just trying to balance all of that. So I think for me, it kind of really depends on where I am in my life as to like who I'm inspired by. So I'm clearly a very fickle inspiree. But at the moment, yeah, just having lots of like women around me that are doing just brilliant things, and finding the time to do it and be open about the difficulties of it as well. Yeah.
No, I think there's really something in that though about being surrounded by people who do inspire you and who sort of pull you up to, I don't know, your own values and hopes and expectations. So I can resonate with that. I think that's very good. Okay, next question, number 7. When you are 80 years old, looking back on your life, what will matter to you the most?
That's hard. I think, well, if I get to that stage, I'll be so grateful for a start. I think just whether I did the things that I wanted to do. So not about like happiness necessarily, because life is not just about doing things that make you happy. Because you can't always be happy. That's just not how life works. But doing the things, making the right choice, like making the choices that I want to make, never feeling like expectation or I don't know, the way other people perceive decisions should be made, just doing it for me and what's the right choice for me, I think. So yeah,
that's good. That's cool.
That's so vague. Can't put that on a mug. Goodness me, that was terrible.
A mouthful, that one. Maybe we'll try and make it happen, but it's going to be like a size 9 font. Good. Okay, next question perhaps is a bit easier. Question 8. What is your favorite food?
Vegetables. I'm vegetarian and we just eat so many vegetables. I would just generally class that as seasonal vegetables. all sorts, even the humble beetroot and parsnip.
Yes, you are talking my language. All about a veggie. Okay, penultimate question. What is your favorite outdoor space?
I think the sea. I surf whenever I can, and I think yeah, I just think being on a board and being out at Croyd or Swanson Sound or somewhere and just sitting in the sea and just not really understanding the size of it and what's in front of you and how big it is, and also what's under it, what's living there and what we can't see, is just like absolutely unfathomable.
Yeah, very true. Good stuff. And then the final question, do you have any catchphrases or mantras that you live your life by?
Ooh. I do not know. You're making me feel like you're making me feel I'm feeling as though I'm not I'm feeling as I'm not a very reflective person. You're making me, you're helping me to think more about that.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair. Is there any, would you say though, I don't know, as you've been pursuing this career and you've come up against obstacles, like you found it quite challenging, like, is there anything you've sort of said to yourself to keep yourself going when people have said no, or you've had to go and invest in those courses? Or has it really just been, this is what I'm doing, and you've just sort of cracked on with it?
Yeah, I guess there's like an innate stubbornness. And I definitely feel as though like, I feel like my generation, our generation, 'cause I think you're probably similar age to me, we actually, like, we're the first ones who things have been available to us more as women particularly. I think like my mum, you know, it was probably, she was still very much expected to be like the sort of house and homemaker type person. She went back to university when I was like 5 or something, which was, you know, like not unheard of, but still huge, like for her. And that was something that like happened mid her life. Whereas I feel like with me, I feel like I've always really hung on to the fact that we should be able to have the same, like men and women should be able to have the same roles. Should the money should be reflective of the same work they do, the equality that should be there and isn't necessarily there, especially in like the outdoor sector and like the rural sector. I think I just keep pushing for that and feeling like, you know, I have so many conversations with women of a lot of maybe these sort of 2 generations above me who say like, you're so lucky to have this job, and like this was never available to me. And so I kind of think maybe I do have mantras of a kind, which is like, you feel like you're doing this stuff for them, for people that couldn't like get these experiences, for people that weren't allowed these jobs, for women that like if they applied for a ranger job would be laughed out of the office. Like, I'm so happy I don't live in that time, and I'm so happy that, you know, I'm the only female ranger at the moment, but there's been, you know, many of them before me at Exmore. And I think I guess that's what I kind of strive for, is just that equality in terms of people being able to do a job, no matter who you are, no matter what you identify as. You should be able to do the same job, and that you should be, you know, that, I don't know, yeah.
Well, I actually feel a bit inspired by that, I'm not gonna lie. So there you go, maybe intentionally or not, you left this on an inspirational note. And I think the thing is, it's a message of hope, you know, particularly for young people. It can be really hard to know how to enter a career. So much pressure is put on young people to make that career choice so early as well. I certainly felt it, and then just rebelled and was like, I'm going to do my own thing. Thank you very much. But you've really packed this conversation with so many tips and points of accessibility. So I really hope that, you know, through this conversation, we can leave people pumped to head out, if not to Exmoor, then at least their local wild space, whether it's a national park, AONB, SSSI, whatever it is. Maybe, you know, we've sparked some interest in people just to get back outside if it's something that's been a bit neglected recently, because it really does make us feel good. No one feels bad for going outside into nature, do they? So yeah, I just want to say thank you for your time today. It has been a fantastic conversation for me, at least very inspirational. And maybe we'll see some people on some of your walks and events that you guys are leading within the national park later this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Please, people come to Exmoor and come and see what we've got to offer, and have a look at our events, because got lots of seashore safaris coming up. So I'd love to see people on them.
Woohoo! Rock crawling is the best.
It is.
Awesome. Well, as I say, thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll be having conversations again pretty soon. And until then, just stay wild, I suppose, is what we say here.
Yeah, stay wild, indeed.
Well, there we go, guys. A massive thank you to Charlotte for this fantastic conversation. You know, the raw honesty about what it's like working as a ranger within these national parks is just so grounding. And honestly, I just feel so grateful for people like Charlotte, knowing that they are spearheading the role of protecting these beautiful wild places for future generations to come. Is just an exceptionally reassuring fact in this modern world, which, to be honest, at times can just feel exceptionally daunting, you know, with all the problems and threats we see to nature. So well done, Charlotte, and the rest of the ranger team, both up and down the country, with everything that you're doing, whether you're employed or volunteers. We see you, we're grateful, and just a pledge now for myself and hopefully for my community that we will continue doing everything that we can to showing up for you guys and helping with your work to conserve these amazing, beautiful wild places. So wherever you are in the world, folks, there is probably a national park not too many millions of miles away. Particularly here in the UK, there are national parks dotted all up and down the country. In fact, having been to all of the national parks myself, I can honestly say they're just brilliant. Get out there, get yourself a map, go for an adventure, take good pictures, share that story, and don't forget the importance of giving back. You know, if you have got a bit of spare time, then do have a look at your local national parks websites. Is there a volunteering scheme you can get stuck into, or can you share their posts on social media, help with lobbying and all the important stuff that needs doing? I mean, Charlotte shared all about it. So as I say, I hope this has left you inspired. But if you are feeling a lack of community, a lack of inspiration, motivation, people around you sort of really empowering you forwards to get out and explore new horizons, then please do consider joining my worldwide network on Patreon. That is patreon.com/spend more time in the wild, and you are guaranteed to find a place that you feel like you belong. The final note for me to say there is a personal thanks to those in the producer tier on that Patreon platform, on my Patreon platform. So that is Simon Woodburn, Stephen Herbert, James Gordon, and Rachel Lawrence. Thank you so much for your support each month. You guys are awesome, and I can't wait to hike with you all again soon. Thanks for listening, guys. Look after yourselves, stay safe out there, and of course, stay wild. I'll see you soon.